We have already noted that antibody is actually very important in fighting against disease-causing organisms that we call pathogens. We saw that these antibodies can actually neutralize, can opsonize, can lyse antigens that are usually found on these pathogens. That means that actually antibodies are actually very, very, very important. But where do we get them? Of course, in our presentation, we saw that actually we have what you call B lymphocytes producing these antibodies. Okay. But can these antibodies be obtained from other, for example, artificial sources? The answer is actually yes. So let us discover how that basically happens. So we all know what immunity is. It's the body's ability to resist against infection. It can happen naturally, that ability to fight infections can be naturally acquired, or it can be artificially induced, enhanced, if I can use that word. So we are going to note that actually the enhancement of the immune system can happen through natural processes, what you call natural immunity, or naturally acquired through, for example, breastfeeding, or from recovering from a disease, but also from receiving vaccines. So that means that the body can have antibodies that these antibodies have obtained from another source, not the body itself. When the body itself produces the antibodies, then that is active immunity. When the body receives the immunity from other sources, then we can talk about passive immunity. So this is basically to emphasize the fact that natural, through natural processes, and artificial, through other sources, can be passive or active. Okay, so both artificial immunity and natural immunity can be passive or active immunity. So let us really first understand what active and passive immunity is. So active, the body produces the antibodies. That is active. That's the meaning. The body produces the antibodies. Okay. This offers long-term protection, and then also is that it provides what you call memory cells to have that secondary response that we talked about in the previous presentation. Okay. Now, passive, on the other hand, is when the body is not producing the antibodies. Actually, the antibodies are provided to the individual. Okay. And when the antibodies are provided, of course, this is basically through immunization. That's why we have this image here. Okay. Through immunization. So this immunization provides short-term protection, and there are no memory cells being produced. So let's first understand active and passive. Is that active, the body produces the antibodies in response to a pathogen or an antigen. And then for passive, the individual is provided with the antibodies. We have memory in active. We don't have memory cells in passive. Long-term protection for active, short-term protection for passive. So like we earlier on said, natural and artificial can be active and also passive. So let's now break that down. So natural, we can have natural passive immunity, or natural active immunity. So what do they mean? Natural, meaning it is a natural process without human intervention. But the body does not produce the antibodies itself. Okay, so this is what happens. For example, a child who is breastfeeding, the milk contains antibodies. So the child is getting antibodies through a natural process, breastfeeding. Okay, breastfeeding. There is nothing to do with laboratory work to transfer these antibodies to the child. That is why it is natural. Is it the child's body producing antibodies? No. That's why it is natural passive immunity. When the woman is pregnant, her antibodies can cross through the placenta and get into the blood circulatory system, the fetus circulatory system. This is also an example of natural passive immunity. It's a natural process, no human intervention, but the fetus does not produce the antibodies, so it is natural passive immunity. The protection offered is temporary. Natural active immunity. It's a natural process, no human intervention. And it is the body that produces the antibodies. You get a disease, your body detects, or you get an infection, your body detects that you actually have an infection. These pathogens have to be dealt with. So immunoresponses are evoked and you heal, you recover from the infection. There are memory cells that are made. These memory cells are the ones that provide you with long-term protection. So in the future, you get an infection from the same pathogen. The memory cells are there to produce the needed antibodies to deal with the issue. Artificial human intervention. Vaccines are made in the lab. And then these vaccines are given to you, or they are administered to humans. So the mechanisms through which antibodies are produced as a result of administration of these vaccines are quite different. And that's why we have artificial active immunity and artificial passive immunity. So let's start with artificial active immunity. That the antibodies are being produced as a result of administration of the vaccine. So this is basically to mean that with artificial, always remember that there is a vaccine. Now, with active, always remember that it is the body that produces the antibodies. So when vaccines are administered, they can make the body to produce particular antibodies. Okay? So that becomes artificial active immunity. The second type of immunity is artificial vaccines. Passive, it means the body is not producing the antibodies. So that means that the antibodies are the ones that are actually being given to the person. That is with artificial passive immunity. So a person who has, in the treatment of rabies, someone can be given preformed antibodies. Basically, antibodies are given to you. This means that the protection is immediate because you don't have to wait for the body to produce the antibodies, because you're basically giving the antibodies. Okay, and the protection is temporary, short term. So vaccines come in different forms. The vaccines, the role of the vaccine is to make sure that the immune system is actually enhanced in its function. This enhancement can be when the vaccines stimulate the immune system to produce antibodies, or when you're basically giving antibodies. So that's what vaccines actually do. So that means that you can be given different types of vaccines to stimulate your body to respond in the appropriate way if you are attacked by a particular pathogen. Okay, so the first type of vaccine that you can be given is dead pathogen vaccine. That means that you have a vaccine made out of dead pathogens. So that means that if you're injected with this vaccine, your body will recognize the antigens on this dead it's basically the vaccine is made out of dead pathogens. Okay, so that means that the antigens on this vaccine, because it's made out of dead organisms, will be recognized by the body, and then antibodies will be made. Okay, and that means that if you are attacked by the same pathogens in future, the antibodies are already there. Okay, that's one. The second, toxoid vaccines. Here, just like the word sounds, toxins, toxoid vaccines. Toxins that are inactivated. That means that if you're given this vaccine that contains the inactivated toxin, you will not get ill because of the toxin. The toxin is inactivated and therefore will not cause health problems. What basically happens is that the body will recognize that, oh, there is this toxin, but it is inactivated. Let's produce antibodies. So that is what happens with diphtheria and the tetanus vaccines. Live attenuated vaccines. You have live microbes, but these live microbes are not harmful. Still, it's about sensitizing the immune system to make antibodies. And then genetically engineered vaccines. Through biotechnology, you can make these vaccines. That's like the hepatitis D vaccines.